Hello, Anna. We're going to take a look at your aesthetics and control posting. So let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look. Here we are. And so just starting off, we're going to check out the overall kind of look of things. Clearly, you have a couple of images that are just too dark. I'm sure that you'll be able to notice that, but we'll point that out anyway. You have your focal length down there. That's good. You're identifying shutter speed and so on. We'll get into to what I'm seeing on those in a moment. How deep? Looks like you set up the experiment fairly well. You've got three things. You do still have on those your time code. Looks like you got that turned off at some point. Maybe you realized it was still on there, and then we're able to get that shut off there on it. But you've got all of those there. Looks good. You know better. This is where you've got some different sizes, proportions. You notated that in your excuse me, in your essay below. That happens sometimes too. So let's kind of bounce right back up to the top here and take a look at what you have to hold. This was really all about just exploring the consequence of a variety of shutter speeds. And it's not about, we didn't really want you to be all about trying to hold the camera steady at all cost. This was really about discovering what you can do with camera movement when it happens, and it's inevitably going to happen. Now, something interesting is going on, and that has to do with the idea that your exposures here are changing pretty dramatically. As you can see here, we're going from dark to sort of middle to bright. And what that's telling me is that the settings on your camera may not be on auto or on shutter priority. You may be on some other type of setting because the camera's not compensating properly here. And that's kind of peculiar. Or you've reached some sort of threshold very quickly and the camera cannot compensate. What we should be seeing is the camera compensating for the exposure. When you ask it to use 125, the aperture should be opening up, allowing more light to come through and exposing that image properly, not making it too dark. You're getting about an average one at 1/15th, but then when you get to half a second, which is a lot more time, the aperture should be closing down automatically, making the exposure again look more balanced. I'm noticing also here that you've got this pretty steady, which is telling me that you are attempting to hold the camera steady, or it may even be that you got the camera sitting on the table. Now, this experiment wasn't about holding the camera steady. This was about discovering what movement looks like, when movement sort of starts to happen, and using it. You'll see in some of the other students' works how that looks. So we'll want to check that out to see just what's going on with the setting on your camera. Maybe we can chat just a little bit, because that's definitely not what it should look like. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's get together. We'll talk. We'll figure out what happened there, because it's a setting on the camera that is creating that variation in exposure. You shouldn't be getting totally black photos. It should be compensating for you. Nor should you be getting totally blown out photos like this, where they're just way too bright as well. Looking at how deep, these look very warm. And so when we're looking at a very warm photo, what that says is that we have a calibration on our camera as far as the white balance. As you remember, when we did the temperature settings, we could vary the settings on our camera as far as the white balance goes, and then we could vary those settings on the light to change that. And so we want to calibrate those together in order to get an even balanced tonal of light. And on this one, you can see it's shifted way over to the yellow, so they're not calibrated correctly on that. Important to know. And it looks like at a point, you realized that, and then you corrected it. So again, when you do see that stuff happening, go ahead and just reshoot it. These are experiments for you to work on. And when you discover something's not working, just jump right back in, reshoot it, reset it, that kind of thing. It really is just that simple. Nothing is wasted by taking time. That's my motto. That said, it looks like you've done the experiment quite accurately. Clearly, we don't want the timestamp there. It looks like you got rid of it later. But this is really just, a matter of exploring and identifying what the depth of field looks like. Again, this isn't really as much of a technical challenge as it may seem on the surface. It's really just about exploring the visual consequence of depth of field so that you know what it looks like and that you can start to identify what, for instance, F8 looks like rather than just that it's a number. And then you do it a variety of times and you start to identify it as an aesthetic rather than just some random number that's on your camera there. So there's a couple there that I think maybe you'll want to do over in order to do it. You may not have to. We'll look at your grades and stuff like that to see. I always kind of suggest, hey, taking a look at where you are and not immediately jumping into doing redos right away, because sometimes you don't have to do redos. It's not going to affect your grade, your overall total grade enough to have to redo something, that kind of thing. So we'll take a look at it. If we decide, yeah, let's go ahead and redo the to hold because the exposures were way off, redo that one, and that'll boost up your grade and that'll affect your overall grade and so on. We'll make that determination maybe after we take a look at your next project, the Follow the Sun project, see where you are on that one. If we decide, yeah, let's go ahead and redo a few on this one to boost that grade up, then we'll do that. Equivalent exposures. So this one it's almost like a math problem, right? Because you had to calibrate one way or another. And it's really, did you get the math problem correct? There's answers here actually, because I had you guys start at a certain solution. So you either got the answer correct or not. Now, the exposure should again be, excuse me, the same. In other words, it shouldn't be fluctuating a whole lot. And again, you got a little bit of fluctuation here. So something's going on there with the camera settings. It's not fluctuating as much as it did with the other one, but you can see this one's that tone, and then it gets a little bit brighter on the other ones. That you shouldn't see that happening. However, it looks like you got see, that's just not right. I mean, we don't want that at all. Let's take a look at that again. Let's see what your exposure solution actually is. I think I messed my camera setting up, hence 3200, not 200. Oh, yeah, that would do it, definitely. At least you're identifying what these are. And then you've got your settings a little bit wrong. When we're working with the camera aesthetics, it can get a little bit unwieldy. Sometimes what you have to do is just slow down. Take a moment and just sort of go, okay, let me just untie all this stuff and just kind of take a moment and start over. Using an analog pad, that when you're doing this kind of stuff can really help as well. I have an iPad. It works really well because I have the stylus. I mean, the Apple Pencil, and it's like a pad, so it works really well for me too. Writing things down like this when you're learning is really helpful. So don't worry too much about it. I mean, I think that when we're doing things we don't know how to do for the first time, you're going to make all kinds of missteps here and there. It just means that you're figuring it out, right? So it's good that you're figuring it out. It's an indication that you're learning something when things don't go quite right. What's important is that you're identifying that, hey, this doesn't quite look right. And you can identify, I think you're identifying this doesn't look right. So that's step one, being able to at least know this doesn't look the way it's supposed to look. That's number one. Number two is then being able to take the time and going, okay, now I'm going to redo it. And then number three is figuring out what went wrong and then being able to make the corrections. We can totally do that. This is not something that you can't overcome. Now, with your aesthetics, do you know better? This one's kind of open, and so you get a lot of freedom here. I like your objects there; those are pretty cool. You're using the sort of translucent glass there, that kind of thing. We're a little bit off on focus. That can happen when you're looking through the viewfinder and you're using real low light, like you are, because it becomes very difficult to see. In this case, you really have to be critical. This one's just beautiful. This one's a really lovely photograph. You're using the whole picture plane here. In other words, from one edge to the other. The light is really using the short lighting, kind of coming from from position number 4, it looks like there on the compass. You get a little bit of secondary fill light on the other side. There in your shadow areas, right in here, you've got a little bit of illumination. It's not total black. This is a lovely photograph, Anna. Very good. Very good. These are quite nice. It's a little bit warm, but that's okay. These don't go to the orange kind of thing that you had on the other. You could see the light in my room here. I've got an old Edison bulb in my in my lamp over there. That's why it looks so orange. See, if this was meant to be a color calibrated room, I would need to change that. These eye sights, these eye cameras here don't calibrate that way. But clearly it's a very warm setting in my camera. Yours here is more of just a shift rather than that. So it's acceptable. These are pretty close to being the same photograph. You want to explore a little bit more when you're working on these and posting. So give that a try. It looks like this one gave you just a little bit of trouble. We'll chat a little bit if you would like to figure out what you need to do to maybe repost some of this stuff. You may not have to. We'll take a look at the other grades that you have and see where you are. Like I said, we'll get together maybe right after Thanksgiving break, where you've got your Follow the Sun project in, kind of know where you are with that, and decide whether we need to redo some of the things that kind of gave you trouble on this one. All right. All right. We'll see you in the studio. Bye-bye now.